Hey, everybody, this is Don Newman, and this is Living a Life Worth Remembering. This is a show that is dedicated to helping you and I live a life that would continue to live on after our own lifetime has ended. It answers the question, how do we live in such a way that we leave a lasting legacy? And I hope this encourages you today, because this show I'm very excited about. I have with me today my friend, that I actually met online, kind of connected with, Nick Terry, who is a chaplain with NASCAR, specifically with MRO, Motor Racing Outreach. And many of you may have heard me allude to my passion for NASCAR and how much I love NASCAR in some of the previous shows. But it's always been my desire to have Nick on here. And in fact, I had him endorse my first book, Responding Up, because I wanted him to be a part of it. But really, the reason I did that is I wanted people to know who Nick Terry is, because I believe in what he's doing. I believe in the life that he leads and the influence that he is sharing with others in that motorsports and NASCAR. And so the title of today's show, I just titled it Living Out Loud, How to Live Life with Passion on Purpose, because to be able to live a life worth remembering that really makes a mark, that really makes an impact, you and I have got to live with passion. We've got to find what we were meant to do and go after it. And sometimes that means taking risk, and sometimes that means just starting at point number one and getting it done. And I've seen Nick do this through his life story. And so, Nick, welcome to Living a Life Worth Remembering.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me. And I'm very excited to join you guys today.
Awesome. I joked before we started filming today, this is the closest that we've actually been. We are truly socially distanced at this time.
This is it.
This is it. But him and I connected online, started talking about God and NASCAR, started talking about a book I was writing. And I mean, we've texted each other and shared with each other, but every time we would try and connect at a race, I'd be on one side of the track, he'd be on the other side doing something. And I've always just been a really big fan, not just of NASCAR, but of what Nick and Motor Racing Outreach has done. Now, you're a chaplain for Motor Racing Outreach, which I understand what that means, but I'm sure there's a lot of people, this is the first time they're hearing about that. Why don't you share what Motor Racing Outreach is about and what being a chaplain is all about?
Yeah, sure. So Motor Racing Outreach serves as the ministry that shepherds with the NASCAR community, walks alongside the NASCAR community. We provide chapel services the day of the races. We provide counseling, Bible studies, many of those things that that a church would do. We just do it in the race community with them as they travel. Now, we're not technically a church; we're a parachurch organization, but we operate much like a church would, just within the fence of the NASCAR garages.
Wow. I know years ago there was a friend of mine, and I cannot remember the gentleman's name, but that's when I first learned about MRO, is someone had invited us out to an event. And I was really curious, because all I could imagine, at first I just thought, hey, you're just praying before the race. You're just going into a meeting, but it's a lot more than that, isn't it?
It is a lot more than that. It's a lot of behind the scenes type ministry that people don't know about. People can see us praying with drivers on pit road before the race. They can see sometimes the chapel services, but that's really just, there's a lot behind that goes on, that takes place. And so MRO has been around for 30 some years now in the NASCAR community. So it's obviously all different this year with COVID and the protocols that NASCAR is having to follow so they can put the races on. But we're still moving on forward. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what is it that you would say, hey, this is my sweet spot. This is what I enjoy most about what I do with MRO.
I love teaching in chapel. I love teaching the Word of God. Now, this is very different than what a typical setting would be for a pastor in a church. I've got maybe 15 to 18 minutes to share a message. which some people might like better than sitting in a church, right? You know, I don't know. We don't have, we don't have, all the stuff to kind of cater to people. I mean, we do it right where the drivers meeting is held, right after. There's often a lot of outside noise going on, pre-race concerts that you're picking up, background from, all kinds of stuff, but it's really great. It's a unique ministry because it gives us the opportunity to step into their world. So I love the teaching, the messages part of Chapel,
wow.
but also love that just our vision is that we bear the presence of God in the NASCAR community. So just being in the garage on a Friday, leaned up against a stack of tires and just, catching up with people as they come and go, is another thing that I really enjoy.
Wow. It's got to be awesome. And one of the things I love about this episode is, I see your passion for NASCAR. I see your passion for God and how they mix together and how you're getting, and it doesn't mean there isn't difficulties. I mean, I'm sure you and I could talk a lot, my ministry background, there's difficulties, but to live your passion and to live it in a way that you're able to do it and be involved in it. And like you said, I could see you sitting by, a big stack of tires, and talking to somebody. One of my favorite pictures, because I see a lot of your pictures, one of my favorite pictures is you baptizing somebody at Daytona Beach.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was probably Corey LaJoy and his wife Kelly, or Dustin Nikes, who changes tires over at Joe Gibbs Racing, or maybe Doug Yates' kids. And so there was a whole group of us that got together and had a baptism service there in Daytona. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's exciting to see. I mean, obviously, if you get in the infield, you'll see a lot of people getting baptized in like a pickup trucks and stuff.
That's right. Yeah, all those little inflatable pools, there's about, 1,000 of them inside the
Absolutely.
track. So, yeah.
Absolutely. There's a lot of significant moments, and again, I realize somebody could be watching this. You're not necessarily a NASCAR fan. Hang on, because I want you to hear some things about Nick's life and his journey and some of the other things. I just wanted to talk a little bit of what his passion is to set up how he got there, because I think it can affect every one of you and wherever you're wanting to go in life. But let me just finish with this as we talk about NASCAR. There's so many significant moments in NASCAR. I'm going to share mine. I want you to share yours. Okay. Mine was not just one event, but it was a series of events. And I'm sure there's a bunch of other people who'd raise their hand if they're NASCAR fans. But I was a state trooper for years before I went into the ministry. And when I retired from being a state trooper, they gave me as a gift tickets for the whole, all the speed weeks. And so I took my daughter, got her addicted to it. And I took my son. I mean, I got all my kids addicted to it. And when I took my son, though, we went to the 500. And that, unfortunately, was when Dale Earnhardt passed away. And we were on the back stretch and, having the trooper credentials, I'm parked, underneath the back stretch where we can just walk down. In fact, I don't know if you remember that race, but Tony Stewart's flipping on the back stretch. There's actually a picture that I saw. And if I look really close, there's me with 2 Cokes in my hand walking up, from the stairs. My son and I got in our truck, and I was excited that Michael won. I mean, that's all I saw. I saw the wreck, but it didn't look bad. My son and I are leaving and headed home. And my wife, Tracy, called me on the cell phone and said, "Did you hear about Dale Earnhardt?" And I just remember just this feelings that I went through, and that I know a lot of people went through that are part of the sport, even those that aren't part of the sport. There were people that it shifted something. And I'm fitting the very next week, I'm going into full-time ministry. I'm going on a staff position at a church I've been a part of. And it made me think about the importance of destiny and life and, at a whole nother level. Fast forward to the summer when Junior won, and him and Mikey are on top of the car hugging. Yeah. I mean, again, somebody could not be a NASCAR fan and still see it and be moved by it. But if you're a fan, man, you're so moved by it. I mean, that's actually where I became a Junior fan, was that scene. I mean, I became a super fan of Junior. You know, that he was the guy I followed. But that was a significant moment that kind of, you know, transcended the sport itself and made me think about legacy and all of these different things. It's impacted me today, you know, and that's my significant moment. What would you say has been your most significant moment in your time in NASCAR?
Yeah, that's an easy one actually for me to answer. Now, as we talk about significant moments in NASCAR, there's a lot that I could look at as a fan, but what we haven't talked about yet, and I want people to know, is that before I started at Motor Racing Outreach, I worked on a pit crew at RCR, Richard Childress Racing, and I worked there for 10 years, and I started pitting in the Cup Series in 2005, and I pitted in the Cup Series for, through the end of the 2011 season. I pitted with Harvick, and then I started in 2012 with MRO. So I've been out, you know, traveling in NASCAR for 19 years now after this season. And so my significant moment is something for me personally, you know, just that happened to me. And it was in 2007, I worked on Kevin Harvick's team. And we won the Daytona 500. We beat Mark Martin by just a couple inches.
Remember that.
You know, Mark is such a wonderful guy. And once I started at MRO, you know, he would always attend chapel. And so I got to know him a little bit, and I just love him. But so that moment right there, and I don't want to get too far ahead, but, you know, as you talk about legacy and things like that, it was that weekend. It was the day after that the Lord called me into ministry. And began to, you know, I began to kind of, you know, unpack what that would look like from there, moving forward. So that was the most significant moment, you know, in my life, especially as it pertains to NASCAR, but maybe in my life, you know, period, one of the most significant moments. So yeah, winning the Daytona 500 was really cool. But what it led to was even better.
Wow. I love that you know, here's a mountaintop experience, because I mean, being part of that pit team, I mean, you're up there with the confetti and changing the hats and pushing the car into the museum, or, you know, into where they keep it at. I mean, you're doing all that stuff. And the fact that rode right into the Lord's call, that to me, it sounds like just one of those highlight moments that you probably look back at pictures and think, man, what a period of time this was.
Yeah. I mean, you can't see it, but behind me, you probably see the corner of it just above my desk. I've got a picture from Victory Lane from that race, and Harvick signed it, and it's just really special. I don't keep a whole lot of you know, memorabilia, but that's a special one, and a few other things.
That's awesome. And that, to be honest with you, that's one of the things I want to help people have. I want people to be able to experience those moments to where the work that they've put in comes to something significant. And, you know, I love teaching on bridges. You know, life is full of bridges, and bridges lead to other places. You know, they're part of the journey. And sometimes you got to go over a bridge to get to a place to go to another place. But to be able to come to significant points, you know, I love when I talk to somebody and they talk about, man, significance when I accepted the Lord, significance when I got married, when my first child was born, when I got this promotion. And that's what this, you know, what I love to talk about, the abundant life that you and I believe in. Doesn't mean it's easy, but it's full. It's full of life. And so I appreciate you sharing that. What I'd love for you to do is kind of, you know, I know it may be hard to kind of you know, bring it all together, but I want you to share about your journey, how you entered into NASCAR in the beginning. And, you know, because what I love about that is, you know, there was a place and time that a door opened and you entered that door, and it led to one thing that led to another thing that led to another thing. And here you are today, living that dream, living that picture that's behind you. So kind of just share that whole kind of journey. Yeah.
So it started in the late 90s. I'd never even been to a race of any kind. And a friend of mine was racing at Caraway Speedway in Ashboro. in Ashburn, North Carolina, and he invited me to come watch him race. And I was a couple of years out of high school, and I went and watched him race, and I was just fascinated by it. I thought, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. You know, these cars racing around, it's loud, they're beating and banging. And I was at a stage in life where I didn't really know what I was going to do when I grew up, you know, except I was already growing up. So I needed to figure something out. And so, I just asked the question, like, do guys get paid to do this? Is this a job? And he explained to me, well, not really at this level, but at the higher levels of NASCAR, people do it for careers. People get paid to do it. And so immediately I fell in love with it. I set my sights on that. One of the things that is always kind of in my DNA is just hard work, you know? So once I set a goal or figure out what I want to do, I just kind of pursue it with all my heart and all my focus and effort. And so that's what I did. I basically went from the ground up. I didn't know anybody that worked in NASCAR at the top 3 national series, to just working my way up. I went to Forsyth Tech Community College. I learned how to, build chassis and build engines in their race car program. I helped some race teams on the weekend, just local teams. I eventually got a job part-time taking care of Clay Campbell's late model car, who's the president of Martinsville Speedway, who's a dear friend of mine. And then after I finished at Forsyth Tech, I got an entry-level position at RCR driving the pit stop car, gluing up the lug nuts for the practices. I would watch the teams, and then after I was done working for the day, I would practice myself for a couple hours. I mean, just running around, just nonstop till my hands were, so tired they couldn't take anymore. Eventually, one of the guys on the Busch Series team had to miss a practice. I said, hey, I can fill in. And they were all like, you can fill in? I said, yeah, and so I filled in. It went good. Eventually got a position on the Busch team. Eventually somebody got suspended on the Cup Series that they had to miss a race. I don't know if you remember the incident with Harvick and Ricky Rudd at Richmond. Yeah, it was like 2003, I think. So I got to fill in the next week at New Hampshire in the Cup Series, and one thing led to another. In 2005, I got to go full-time in the Cup Series on the pit crew. Wow.
Now, so you're practicing afterwards. Now you're driving the practice. You're driving the car in there. They're practicing. Then they're done. And when they're done, you're going and practicing.
All by myself.
With no promise it's going to go to anywhere.
No. They don't make promises for hard work in NASCAR. They make promises if you can do the job. And if you're good enough to do the job, you can get the job. But I tell you, one of the best advice that I've ever gotten, it was before I got hired at RCR. I wanted to be a jackman, and I had a little bit of background doing it. I was actually pitting for a friend of mine who raced in the Pro Cup Series. You didn't have to be real good to do that. And so I got a tryout over at Petty Enterprises, and I went over there and I didn't even do a pit stop. They just pulled the car in, and I did it by myself. And the pit coach, Mark Malden, who is a dear friend of mine, he told me, said, I'm just going to be straight up with you. You're just not good enough for us to hire you to do something like this. You've got to improve here, here, and here. And that honesty was some of the best advice that I've ever been given, because it wasn't given in a bad way. He was just being honest and giving it in truth and in love. And that is really what set me up to say, hey, okay, I know where I'm at. This is where I need to get to. And it really pushed me to work super hard to get there.
Wow. I love that, because, that displays what I'm talking about, that the fact that you'd go and practice. I remember my brother who went on to play college sports as a quarterback, could have actually gone played pro. He got hurt. And in high school, he wasn't one that you'd look at and say, man, he's the most naturally talented person. But I remember watching my brother. I mean, first off, him and I played ball together. He's 4 years older than me. But I remember watching him go down, because we lived in the country, and run between trees. Nobody there, just practicing running. And then the tire, any quarterback, you're always going to see the tire throwing again and again and again.
Yeah.
And again. And, I think what you're saying, and I love this, is that passion is best demonstrated through hard work.
Yeah.
through hard work. You know, you can't tell me you're passionate about something. Show me you're passionate about it.
That's right.
And a passionate person's going to stay after everybody leaves and practice, you know, lug nuts or whatever you know, you were doing and stuff like that. And I think it's so important to have that in anything that we do. You know, you can be mad at the world and why isn't it happening for me? Well, look, what are you passionate about? Get committed to it. And that's exactly what it sounds like you've done. But one of the things, just, you know, getting to know you, reading about you, and us kind of talking back and forth. And again, there's nobody on this show. I haven't got to interview the Lord Jesus yet. So there's nobody who's totally perfect on this show, but I love bringing out some of the things. And one of the things I love is not only you're a person of passion, but a person of humility. And, you know, what do you think is the key? And when we talk about humility, I'm not talking about weakness. Humility is not weakness. What do you think the key to being a person that's both passionate, okay, that really is on fire about what they're doing, living out loud, and also at the same time, you know, humble about it? And what does that mean to you?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm definitely the most imperfect person you've ever had on this show. I can promise you. I mean, going back to when I worked on the pit crew, you know, we didn't always even obey the state troopers. So please forgive me and tell all your friends that.
This is what the show is really about, Nick. I've actually got some clocking devices here that we talk about.
Yeah. I was in the back of the van. I wasn't driving.
Okay,
you know,
you weren't
these
driving.
vans are full of pit crew guys. All right. So to answer your question about humility, you know, I think the easiest way I can answer that is it's a unique place that God has called me to minister to. And I'll never forget this one moment. I was getting ready to do a wedding for a NASCAR driver. And there was all kinds of NASCAR folks coming in. And the only thing that I have at a wedding, okay, is the gospel. I don't have, and I always tell people that when I'm married. I'm like, I don't have a different message. All I have to share is the unconditional love that God has shed on us through Jesus. That is the model for your message. I don't have another message to share. That's it. And so I look at all these NASCAR people coming in to attend this wedding, and I'm like, who am I that God has chosen me to share this message with these people who are not likely going to attend a church service to hear this message? And to me, that is a really humbling thought. And so the way that I try to think about it, or something I say to myself, okay, I say to myself through prayer every time before I share a message in chapel is, you know, God, it is a privilege to have this microphone. Thank you for choosing me. Because it's easy in NASCAR to say, well, you know, if I can get in this picture with so-and-so, or if I can name drop this person or whatever, it's really going to boost me up and make me feel a little bit more important. But that is the opposite of humility, right? It is to allow God to exalt you, because the Bible says that God exalts the humble and he opposes the proud. And so it's to remain humble and not prideful. It's to be not proud and let God open doors and God exalt me into places of ministry. And so that is the most important key to walking in humility as it pertains to ministry. Because it's easy to say, oh, you know, it's the NASCAR chaplain. But I mean, really, it's a cool job, but, you know, there are struggles and, you know, everything you see on TV or the glam life is not all what it, you know, is what it, you know, turns out to be. I mean, you know, when you're coming home from a race at, you know, 2:00 in the morning, you're tired, and, you know, the weekends are your family's at home and you're on the road. And so there's a lot of challenges to it too, but that's how I, you know, daily try to walk in that humility.
Yeah. I love what you've said, because, you know, I think that's, you know, the two verses, the one you just shared about God promoting the humble, the other, your gift will make room for you. Mm-hmm. You know, when I look at somebody who has climbed the ladder the right way, didn't climb it alone. They climbed it with God, and they climbed it in a way that, you know, that God put them in that position. And, you know, and I think that is so key. Well, I know you're passionate about NASCAR. I know that you and I could tell stories and stuff. I mean, like, you know, part of me wants to go, man, tell me about you doing Dale Jr.'s wedding. I mean, tell me about that. But because I'm such a Junior fan, but I want to talk about some other things. We can talk about that later and some of the great stories of NASCAR. But I know that you're passionate about your family. And, I've gotten to know you and both Amy a little bit. And, I love your family. It's Sam, Arabella, and Sharon.
That's right.
And I've seen the pictures, but there's such, there's such a unique story about Sharon that I want you to share. But, you've communicated with me and I've read about your passion. Like I'll see you post something about NASCAR that, again, somebody that is all into NASCAR alone would just be talking about what's going on there. But I'll look and you'll have a bigger post about Sam and golf.
Yeah.
You'll say more about him and you taking him somewhere and being at his golf match. And, I think that's important because, living with passion, we can't get these out of balance. They've got to be a passion about our career, a passion about God, but a passion about the family. But share about your family, and then tie on to the end of the story of Sharon. In fact, I want to bring up a picture now that I know you've sent to us just to show what an incredible family you have, just a beautiful family. And there's a lot that picture can say to a lot of us today. So thanks for sharing that picture. But share about your family and then share about the special story about Sharon.
Yeah, so I have 3 kids, and first let me start with my wife, Amy. She is the rock to our family, and she's just an amazing woman of God. And then I have 3 children, Sam, Arabella, and Sharon. Sam is 12 years old, and he is a very, very talented young aspiring golfer. He's a +1 handicap at 12 years old. So if that tells you anything. Arabella is my other biological child. She's an amazing young woman. And then Sharon, who is our 3rd child, she's adopted from Uganda. She's been with us for 5 years now. I don't know. I lose track, but it's because I really lose track because she's part of our family and we don't even, look at it that way. So we went through the adoption process, was really quite difficult, to be honest with you. It was quite challenging. It's one of those things that when you're going through, you feel like you're trying to swim out of the middle of the ocean, right? And then once it's over, it's over. You're like, oh, we're done with that, and it wasn't bad at all. But going through it, it was difficult. I will say this, and I don't want to get too far off track, but it's one of those things that if I knew how difficult it was, I don't think I would have done it, right? And so I think a lot of times the Lord doesn't give us a complete vision on how things are going to be because of that, because we wouldn't have, because when we started it, it was like, yeah, I'll do that. Sure. Why not? I believe the Lord wants me to do it. He just didn't quite show us what all it was going to entail, but yet he was faithful every step of the way. And so we went through the adoption process. Sharon is a super easy kid. She's just easy. I mean, she doesn't, she's just an easy kid. So she fits right in. And we have a blessed, wonderful family with, when I think about the question that you asked, I feel like my greatest ministry is at home. And I think that should be true for all dads who are leading a family. So whether you're in ministry or not full-time, you still have a ministry if you're a Christian through your workplace or wherever it may be. But your greatest ministry starts at home. It starts with making disciples of your children and leading your family well. And so that's why I'm so passionate about my kids. And I'm super proud of them, and that's why I post pictures of them all the time versus pictures with me with somebody at a racetrack, right? And that's that whole walking in humility thing. If it doesn't bring glory to God, I try to just, make it not about me. But my kids, I'll just rifle off posts about them all the time because I'm so proud of them, and I, it really even reminds me of the way God is, proud of us through his son, Jesus, and just the way that he would celebrate It's much like the story of the prodigal son, right? But
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm super proud of my kids, and I love to share their accomplishments and what they're doing. They were all three baptized in Daytona as well.
Oh,
that
how cool.
that same service. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So,
That's awesome. I heard somebody say this last week at a meeting I was at. Hey, the only person that we're required by God to bring to heaven with us is our children.
yeah,
You
that's
know,
good.
you think about that responsibility and, you know, and keeping that balance. And I think all of us have to always keep that as a balance. But I love the fact you shared, I know in one interview that really what led to this whole, and you're so right that many times God won't show us the whole picture. It's almost like, yes, step out here. And then you go, this has been a 15-year journey. What is going on here?
Yeah.
But that's part of his leading. He gives us vision enough to walk into something and enough stamina and passion and all the things to keep going. But one of your interviews, you shared how Amy had read a book and that was the catalyst to the adoption. Share about that briefly.
Yeah. She read about she read about a young woman who had moved to Uganda and had basically adopted these kids and lived there because she wasn't able to adopt them and bring them home for whatever restrictions there were. And I don't remember the details of that story. It's been so long ago, but I think it was called Kisses from Katie, or I'm not sure, but it was about her adoption journey in Uganda. And so we began to do some studying and just reading about Uganda. We fell in love with it. The number of orphans there, just the civil wars that had gone on there in the past, and just the result of that. And, people sometimes ask us, they're like, why'd you adopt from Uganda? Well, one, the reason we adopted to begin with is because we feel like that aligns with who God wants us to be. And you don't have to adopt a child to care for orphans, right? There's other ways to care for orphans, but we felt God called us to adopt. But two, because we fell in love with Uganda, to think that Sharon, her life is going to be radically, radically different than it would be. Now, adoption in America is wonderful too. There's tons of kids that need adoption and fostering and things here within our own country. But Sharon, if I'm going to be completely transparent, she had no future. I mean, no future at all. I mean, she hadn't even, her nutrition was, she didn't even have a nutrition, right? I mean, just was rice and beans, and that was it. That's all really she was ever going to eat, or to, have a place to use a bathroom that wasn't outside. And that was the life that was paved for her future. I mean, it's almost impossible, and so to take a young child like that, bring them into America to where now she is a U.S. citizen, and to give her a future, right? To give her hope and to help her prosper. So that was kind of the reasoning for adoption, there.
Wow. And I love the pictures and the things that I think Amy has shared a lot on, so much of the unrest that we've seen in our country this last year. And again, not being political or trying to make a statement, but the fact that she's saying, hey, look, we're living it. We're living a unity that doesn't matter if you're white or black. And this is God's family. And so and I know you didn't step into adoption to make a statement. You did it because of the passion. And again, you're being led by passion, and you read a book, and you know how much I believe in books and how a book can change a life. Why we're going to get you to write one and Amy to write one.
Amy's working on writing one. I'm dragging my feet. It's that whole passion thing where I was doing all the practice pit stops. I haven't gotten there yet with my book. So when I do get that passion, I'll knock it out quick. But
yeah, I know you will.
Not there yet.
I know you will. But just a significant message within your family, and I love sharing that. Again, one of the biggest reasons I, wanted your endorsement on the book. I mean, it means a lot that you would have endorsed it, and, you took time to look at it, but I really wanted people to know who Nick and Amy and your family are. We need more stories like that. And again, it doesn't mean that you don't have days that aren't perfect. I mean, that's the great news and the grace of God. But, I think there's incredible stuff. And one of the things I want you to kind of end with is, the abundant life that we believe in. you know, it's not about cars or houses. I mean, yes, God can do all kinds of things, but I want you just to share from your heart, because I don't know who's listening to this today, but I can tell you the big thing I'm really hoping and praying, not only does this let people know who Nick and Amy Terry are, but I'm asking the Lord to use it in a way to let someone know, hey, there is an abundant life that is there for you. But what do you see as the key of living an abundant life? And, you know, even weave in the practicing and stuff, but just share a little bit about that, and then we'll close up here in just a moment.
Sure. Yeah. So I want to connect the dots here on part of my story to your listeners. And I would say too, before I do that, it's great that people want to know me and my wife and my family, but I really just want to take all that and point it to Jesus. I want people to know Jesus. And that's really what, you know, my life is all about and my ministry is all about. But I want to connect the dots on a couple of things that I talked about. And part of my story, if we jump back to 2007, winning that Daytona 500 was Sunday night. And Sunday night we went back to the hotel and we all got pizza and watched the news and, you know, post-race coverage. It was so special. Monday morning we got up and we went back to the Daytona 500 museum there. They have a champions breakfast. They're doing a bunch of interview and media stuff with the driver and crew chief. We're just kind of hanging out as a team. But we get to attend the champions breakfast, and then we sign the back of the car. And then we push that car in the museum as a team and do some pictures and things like that. It was one of the most special days of my life. And then we left probably after lunch. It was about 2 or 3 o'clock maybe, and we were flying back home. And I was just having a time of worship and just listening to some worship music and thanking God for just his blessings and just the opportunity to, you know, to experience that. And it was one of those, you know, top 3 or 4 significant moments in my life where I felt like God really spoke to me. And I had this thought, and the thought was this, and keep in mind, this was the best feeling that I had ever experienced. I'd worked my entire adult life to get to this moment at the pinnacle of NASCAR. It just felt so good. And I prayed this. I said, God, this must be what heaven feels like, because this is the best feeling I've ever felt. And I'm telling you, it was as if the Holy Spirit just whispered in my ear, this is not even close to what I prepared for you. Not even close to what I prepared for you. And so I just began to think, like, I've spent my whole adult life pursuing success, right? I mean, we get home that Monday, and the second race of the year in 2007 was Fontana, California. So we worked till midnight because we were already a day behind, trying to get the Fontana car loaded and out the door. And I worked my whole life to obtain a goal, a trophy. And in a moment, it was gone. I mean, just that fast. It was like we experienced it. It was over. And then it was gone. And, you know, I got to thinking, like, well, why am I spending all of my time focusing on something that's here and gone? I mean, that's really the value that it has. And so God really began to stir in my heart that I need to spend my time pursuing people, not things, not trophies. And you know, at the pinnacle of NASCAR, and I see it in ministry, that when the world says you've accomplished everything and you've achieved everything, those are some of the most empty moments in people's lives. And so I began to just pursue people. And you know, like you said about taking your kids to heaven, the only thing you can take with you to heaven is people. You can't take stuff. And, you know, as you titled this message today, or this podcast, you know, about leaving a legacy. Like, leaving a legacy is not about leaving stuff, you know, for people, land or houses or whatever. And all those things are great. I hope that I have some things to pass on to my children and to leave for them. But the legacy is about Jesus. It is about your ministry. It is about relationships. It is about the way that you've loved people and served people. And that's the legacy that I try to live by, not only every day, but, you know, in my relationships and, you know, with people. And so in the book of Joshua, Joshua was leading the people of Israel into the promised land. And they got to cross the Jordan River before they entered the promised land. And the Bible says before they did, that God would part the water for them to cross on dry ground. And this would have been the second time, right, that they crossed on dry ground, a body of water. And it wasn't super wide, but you weren't walking across it, you know. And then it says this: as soon as the feet of the priests touched the water, God said, I will part the water from upstream and you'll cross on dry ground. And it required something, right? It required them to step in believing that God was going to do what he said he was going to do. And so that's, you know, probably my life verse that I try to live by. And I would encourage people listening, you know, to live by, because, you know, it takes a step of faith. And you know, you may be afraid, you may be concerned that you're going to mess up or drop the ball, but at least take a step of faith and let God do the rest. And so that's kind of been that was kind of what, you know, how I stepped into ministry. You know, it was uncomfortable, it was scary, and I wasn't qualified, but like, man, I'm going to step in by faith, what God has asked me to do.
Wow, man, that's so powerful what you just shared. And not that I'm going to rename this episode, but it's almost like I'm sitting there listening to you, and it's like, how do you enter into this abundant life? You step in. Mm-hmm. Step in. You make a decision to step in, and everything's not going to be perfect. You know, you can't wait to step in when everything's prepared. You know, you can't wait until everything is set up, and, you know, you got to step in. And yes, you will mess up along the way, but you've got to step in. And that's huge, just what you said. And you know, if you're listening to this, I just want to encourage you. If you've stayed with us this long and, you know, heard some of these stories, I don't know what it is. Maybe you're supposed to start a business. Maybe, you know, God's drawing you to himself. Maybe it's about writing a book. Whatever it is, you know, step in. Don't let time continue to pass by. Because if you want to live out loud, if you want to live with passion, if you want to live that abundant life, you've got to step into it. And of course, we believe that comes by following Christ and by submitting your life to God. And, you know, he can take you all kinds of places. You know, I think of Nick, his life just starting out as a young man. Hey, went to a race and look where it's led to. But this isn't the end. It's going to go to other places too. And so, you know, with that, Nick, just I love everything you've shared, but, you know, 80 years from now, what would you want people to know about Nick Terry? I think you've said it, but I would love to hear you share it maybe a different way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty short answer, just that I did all I could do to love the Lord and to serve the Lord. And, you know, and I answer it that way because, you know, you're never going to love the Lord worthy enough of what he's worthy of, right? But that was the effort in which I gave. I mean, the Bible says to work hard to show the results of your salvation. And so we've talked a lot about working hard. You're not working hard for your salvation. You're working hard to show the results of your salvation. And so I want to just love the Lord with all my heart, love people, you know, as I love myself, love my neighbor, and just serve him to the best of my ability. And everything else beyond that will take care of itself.
Wow, that's great. Well, what is next for Nick Terry and Amy Terry? Share what's going on and what's in the future.
Yeah, so the future is I'm going to continue to serve with MRO as full-time chaplain for NASCAR. So I love that ministry. But we're also launching a business ourselves, my wife and I, and we're just in the early processes of this. But we're going to do two things. One, we're going to offer wedding consultation, not necessarily planning, but helping folks, you know, kind of work out and consult, give them some ideas. A lot of times when I meet with people and ask them what they're going to, you know, when I'm doing a wedding, it's like, hey, what do you got planned for your wedding? And a lot of times they're like, I don't know. So we're going to help them with that. We're going to offer coordinating the day of the wedding because it's the most special day of people's lives, right? And so things need to happen in a timely fashion and they need to happen well. We're going to offer me officiating weddings, which, you know, I've done a lot of weddings already to begin with, but it's all been just people inside the NASCAR community. So we want to help people in the little bit of free time that we have with weddings. We also started this really cool thing where we're painting these door signs, and maybe you've seen them where they're 4 foot tall, and we paint welcome on them. One of the things that we're doing that's unique to what we're doing is we're taking the L in welcome and writing Joshua 24 verse 15. It's when Joshua gave his final charge to his people, and he gave them the charge, to stop worshiping idols, but to worship God only. And it says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And so these two things that we're doing really connect together well, because we want to encourage people to just invest in their home, invest in their marriages, strengthen their marriages, and invite the Holy Spirit into their home, in a way that is honoring to the Lord, in a way that they're declaring, hey, it's for me and my family, we're going to serve the Lord, and we're going to trust the Lord with all our heart. So that's what we're getting into on the side right now, apart from full-time ministry, which keeps me pretty busy in itself. So.
That's awesome. And future book writing, of course.
Of course, yeah. That is on my, I'm trying.
I'm the guy that's always going to be encouraging you, making sure that you leave that behind at some point. So listen, I so appreciate you being with us today. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed it. I could have talked again for another 30 minutes and gotten lost in the middle of it, but it's so nice to be this close. I'm sure we're going to find a race date or some port time in the future that we'll connect even more. But thank you for being here.
Sure. Yeah, you're welcome. And just to any of your listeners, they can find me on Twitter at Nick Terry MRO or Instagram, Nick Terry MRO, and just reach out to me. I'll love to respond and connect with people and chat with people and encourage them in their faith and in life any way that I can. Yeah.
That's awesome. We're going to share some links here at the end on how you can connect with Nick. And I encourage you to, many of the things that he'll post on Twitter have been inspirational to me. So we're going to put those links up. We're also going to put other links up that will share information about what you and Amy are doing. And again, I love what you said about, we're just trying to promote the Lord. I totally get that. And that's why I want to help share about you, because it's a story that leads to the story. And so we're going to share that at the end there. So God bless you guys. Tell Amy we said hello. And
yeah, I sure will. And I'm glad you found some inspiration on Twitter, because I have this love-hate relationship with Twitter, Sometimes I take extended breaks from Twitter. So anyways, well, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. And you keep up the good work. I appreciate all your support and, things you're doing for Amy and I. So Absolutely. Thank you.
We're here for you. Well, I'm so glad you got to tune in on this episode today of Living Out Loud, my interview with Nick Terry, hearing how he's living the abundant life as a chaplain with MRO and so many other things that are happening. And I just want to encourage you, whatever it is in your life that you're looking at, and it's like that river he was sharing, man, it's time to move. It's time to make a change. I just want to encourage you today to make that step and step in and step forward, because I know that God has an abundant life for every one of us, including you. Thank you so much for tuning in to Living a Life Worth Remembering. I want to encourage you to share this with other people on YouTube. You can go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. That's Coach Don Newman on YouTube. And also you can select on the YouTube channel a way to be alerted whenever there's a new broadcast that comes up once a month. I'm bringing up a new episode of Living a Life Worth Remembering. A couple of the most recent episodes are very exciting, sharing different points and stories. Mitch Rossell from Nashville, the country music singer, was a guest of mine last month. You can go back and listen to that episode. But I want to encourage you to share this with others. They also can go to iTunes at Living a Life Worth Remembering and subscribing there as well. But subscribe, share, and most of all, you focus on living a life worth remembering. Thank you for being with us today. God bless each and every one of you.